Gaelic football on Off the Ball.
With AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out #TheToughest for more.
We've got a bumper weekend of Gaelic football ahead of us with 10 games across the provinces. Not just a case of looking at some of the leading contenders of Sam Maguire coming out for the first time in this summer, but also places in the All-Ireland series up for grabs in some of these matches as well. Delighted to say we've got former Sligo captain Neil Ewing and four-time All-Ireland winner with Kerry, Darran O'Sullivan, with us. How are you getting on, lads?
All the best. Well, yeah. And you?
I'm not too bad. I'm looking forward to some pretty interesting matchups this weekend, Neil, including when we look at Connacht. We'll talk about Roscommon and Galway because that's a big game between two Division 1 sides, but also an intriguing match between Sligo and New York, with your county coming into this on the back of becoming, I believe, one of the big dogs, with one word left out is what the captain had to say after the final midweek.
Yeah, I don't think any of us could word it any better than Kenneth Mulligan did on Wednesday night. I guess an incredibly proud moment for everybody in Sligo, and a great bunch of lads. Great to see them get their reward to go to Tuam and win a Connacht title. Second Connacht Under 21 title in a row is just incredibly impressive. So I think we could all forgive him maybe one misstep or two in his speech, but I think it really hit home. Just what it meant to everybody in Sligo, and of course it was popular online as well, so fair play to Canis, fair play to the lads. A real great news story. Yeah,
when it comes to this achievement, back-to-back successes, beating the three big guns is how the sentence started to have come through against Mayo, Galway and against Roscommon, all on the road in winning this title makes it very hard-earned as well. Are we looking at a particularly strong group of Sligo footballers coming through? Because this current bunch were a decent minor team as well, weren't they?
Yeah, there was a decent minor team. A lot of those guys would have won a Connacht minor title as well. And, we had went, so long in Sligo without any underage provincial success that we've had, three Connacht titles in a 3-year period is just, something that, even talking to some friends during the week that we couldn't have ever foreseen. You're always thinking, okay, if we can finally get an under 20 title, finally get a minor title, in the next 5 or 10 years and start building on that, to have such sustained success in such a short period of time is really incredible. Is it just one good bunch of lads? I don't know. Probably, again, a lot of those lads would have been involved with a Summerhill team, which won a Connacht A title, schools title this year, and also St. Attract has won a Connacht B schools title this year. So, yeah, there's a little bit of depth there. I think, it's probably just a reflection of some great work that's went on in the schools. And, to be honest, a lot of that work would have maybe started 15 years ago, and, probably not every group or crop that's come through has been able to compete at the very top level. But definitely you can see if you get the right people involved, if the right structures are there, you get your rewards from it. But, a lot of people in Sligo are very positive about the wins. I guess probably one lookout for me, and it's not to be in any way pessimistic about it, is if we look at our nearest and dearest neighbours in Roscommon, they're competitive now in Division 1. They've picked off a few Connacht senior titles over the last 2 years, but that's probably only on the back of a decade where at underage level they were winning titles maybe every 2 or 3 years at minor and under 20. So it's great to get these wins, but I think we probably need to back it up over a 5 to 10 year period for us to, really go and try to emulate what they've done in Roscommon and move into that next tier of teams.
And Neil, you could well be a quiz question in the future in Sligo. You might be the first team ever to qualify for the All-Ireland series without beating a team from Ireland to do so.
Yeah, that's the challenge that's ahead of the seniors, and I suppose lots of people look at it as an opportunity. But I know myself, as I was in that group of players preparing to go into Markage Park tomorrow and play New York, and maybe to people outside of Connacht or to people who maybe aren't aware of the quality that's in New York, that might sound like I'm being a little patronising, but it's not at all. I think if you look at that New York team, there's some phenomenal talent in it. Even before the Leitrim game, you look through the panel that they named, even the team that they named. They have two, Alan Campbell, Bill Maher from Tip, who would have won a provincial title with Tip in 2020, Rob Wharton, another one of their vendors from Kerry, who Darran will be familiar with. I know he's had some time in the Kerry panel, or at least Kerry wanted him involved in their panel at one stage or another. Owen Kerrin was an All-Star nominee with Galway. Gavin O'Brien, again, somebody probably wouldn't be a million miles off the Kerry panel. Adrian Varley has, done his time in Division 1 with Galway. Shane Carthy has won a Club All-Ireland and 2 All-Irelands with Dublin. And, that's not a calibre player that you find in Division 3 and 4 counties. So, to be honest, it's been coming for a number of years, because what they've started to do in New York is bring through those homegrown players, which is the real good news story here. But they've also kept those guys that have moved over. Maybe they've been just with different visa situations than maybe years ago. Even probably a reflection of the different demographic of guy that's gone over there and the type of jobs that they're working in now. They've been able to keep them a bit more long term, start to build things year on year. So, I was in no way surprised when they beat Leitrim. And I think it's important to emphasise that it should be no way seen as a reflection on Leitrim that New York beat them. I think New York would beat, maybe 10 to 15 teams back here at home, or they have the capability of doing that in a one-off game.
Darren, would you agree this New York team have got the capability to beat 10 teams in Ireland right now?
I wouldn't disagree. I think if they got enough games under their belt, like I was only going through their team for the weekend, and there's a lot of quality there. And I think what they're probably lacking is more regular competitive games. Probably is the only thing holding them back. I think it's a lot more appealing, and Neil touched on it there. The lads that are going out there, they're not going for short stints now. They're actually setting up shop there. They're staying for longer periods. They're settling in. They're buying into what I suppose New York are trying to build from the underage. And we've seen they've had success in Féile level in recent times and colleges and stuff. So, just going through their team for the weekend, obviously Sligo are going through a great patch at the moment, and they've had success, so they're going to be full of confidence. But I don't think it'll be the biggest shock in the world if New York push Sligo all the way. I can't see it with the way Sligo were moving, and with the success of the under-20s. I think that always gives another knock on, another kick in confidence. But it's great, a bit like London last year. Throughout the National League, they had a great run of it. If you can get maybe a year or two of positive results, who's to say they won't start climbing the ladder a bit more?
Yeah, the thing about it is, Darren, we were listening to the Brosnan brothers, Mikey Brosnan, who scored the winning penalty. His dad had gone over from Kerry, he said, in the late 80s. He didn't want to say exactly when he went over in the interview, in case anyone was checking up that he didn't have a visa when he originally arrived in New York, was the joke he was making. But his 2 young lads have come through the club system within New York, are now playing for the New York senior team. Shane Carthy was on with us last week. He spoke about the fact that, his football had come in New York before he moved over to Dublin in his late teens, and then becomes an All-Ireland winner with Dublin. This is a totally different story compared to guys who used to go over there for a few summers or maybe go for work and who would put a jersey on. They're actually creating their own players right now. Yeah,
that's it. They're creating their own, and like you said, it's not fellas going over for the jolly up for the summer. They're buying in. I know from talk to the few lads over in Tralee who'd be closer to Gavin O'Brien, and the training he was telling them was heavy metal. They're buying in. Even Shane Carthy, I think, is based down in Boston. He's travelling up. You don't do that for the crack. So they obviously feel that they're on the cusp of maybe creating something. They obviously created history last week. Can they do it two games in a row? It's hard to know. But genuinely, there's so much positive about it. You would hope that it is something that can keep growing, keep evolving, and if they can keep adding in the couple of homegrown players. I'm actually out there myself in 2 weeks, and I have a couple of trips up to Féile teams, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing it, because I have buddies over there and they constantly rave about the work that's done underage. And a lot of it is lads who have grown up in New York their whole lives and are probably taken to Gaelic games because of their friends or their fathers or mothers played it back before them. So look, it's exciting, and look, I think we're all hoping for a good game. Whether they can make it a fairy tale Connacht final appearance, I think it may be one step too far, but hopefully it'll be a good game.
Yeah, potentially that quirk is there. If they win, they go into the All-Ireland Series. If they're to go into the Tailteann, they're not going to play in the group stages, and they go directly to a preliminary quarter-final in that competition. So that draw may have to be changed a little bit if New York were to qualify. Neil, you did have your reservations before the Leitrim game about New York's participation in Connacht. Do you still have those reservations about them playing in the province?
Yeah, I suppose reservations is one word for it. I'm just not sure it's the best solution for New York, to be honest with you, Will. And it's because of that situation that you mentioned there, where the rules for the competition at the outset stated that New York will enter the Tailteann Cup at the preliminary quarter-final stage. And it just ties back to the unpredictability of championship football, and including a team from 3,000 miles away in that you're looking at, to travel over to Ireland for any game. It really, at a minimum, it's probably a 5-day journey. So, I think if the GA and everybody involved were honest, the competition was designed on the presumption that New York, wouldn't win a game and definitely wouldn't end up in a Connacht final. And then you have that, I suppose, situation where if New York end up in the Talcon Cup, that they don't play in the group stage. And if New York end up in the Sam Maguire, that they do play in the group stage. So I just don't know how we tie that up. And then if we look at the practicalities of that, if New York end up having to play in the Sam Maguire group stage, which, I would say is a 50-50 possibility, over the next 24 hours, we're going to see how that plays out. But they have to play, a minimum of 3 extra games. I know there's talk that a home-based team will fly out for one of those games, but you're still looking at asking 30 amateur players to fly back to Ireland for maybe 2 consecutive weekends, with, maybe just 10 to 14 days notice. So, listen, I think we should do more to integrate New York. I think there's loads more we can do for New York and all the other, I suppose, GA outlets across the world, to get them more involved. But just including them in a championship where games are played with 2 weeks notice, and, having rules in that championship that are different depending on what competition they progress to, it just doesn't sit perfectly with me.
Darran, if we can stick with Connacht and go to Sunday's semi-final at the Hyde, Roscommon up against Galway. Galway coming out on top in the Connacht final last year by 3 points, 219 to 216. They're looking to get to the final in Connacht for the 8th year in a row, which is remarkable consistency. On a wider picture, do you see Galway this year having another run like last year and being Sam Maguire contenders, before we even look at what happens with the Nestor Cup first?
Yeah, I know as soon as I say this, it's going to mean Roscommon are going to beat them. But I think Joyce has got exactly what he's wanted out of so far in this season. For me, I actually think Galway have the best set of forwards in the country. And the one thing I felt was holding them back, probably not holding them back last year, but they needed to develop, was a stronger squad. And looking at the team they named for the weekend, even like keeping the likes of Finnerty on the bench, I think he's got that this year. I did feel last year at the end of the All-Ireland, I thought this year was going to be the most open season we've had in a while. I don't think there's any standout like team that are a good step or two ahead of anyone. If I was to pick someone, obviously, I'd be shot if I didn't say Kerry, but I think Galway are probably in the best position to win it at the moment. I know they got beaten by Mayo, or they beat Mayo, whatever, but I just think that Joyce is building something nicely. Joyce has this steely toughness about him. He has this bit of grit, and I think it's something that maybe was lacking from Galway teams over for the last number of years. I think he's developing that nicely. I think the fact that they were missing Shane Walsh and Comer for big periods of the league actually helped them. I thought Tierney has been brilliant. I think Heaney might be one of the most underrated players in the country. McDade's actually not starting the weekend, and he'll be in the top 3 or 4 midfielders in the country. Actually, most of the best midfielders in the country are actually in Connacht at the moment. So, no, look, I think it's silly to write off Roscommon. A lot of us did it for the Mayo game, and they proved what a good team they are. And I do think the fact that they stayed in Division 1 this year is exactly what they needed. For so many years, they're a yo-yo team. It's very hard to build momentum, and momentum comes after a couple of years of playing at the top level. And I think you have to be playing at the top level in Division 1. You nearly have to prioritise staying in Division 1 for a couple of years to start building. And I think staying in Division 1 this year is going to help them confidence-wise as well with some of the teams that they beat. It'll be a tough game. It'll be very, depending on conditions as well, but I think Galway are well primed to go a step further this year.
Darran, when it comes to Roscommon, they'll probably be relishing trying to stop that Galway forward line, though. We saw that against Mayo. They did a really good job of halting Mayo's progress during the game, getting themselves into a lead position, and then being able to hold on. They seem to really enjoy those kind of battles throughout the pitch. I think Paddy Andrews said in the football pod they actually stopped any momentum, and basically they controlled the way that the game was played in that game against Mayo. They're probably thinking similar game plan for Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I actually listened to that by Paddy, and he spoke really well about it. And I just think there was probably a lack of composure then of Mayo, and Mayo probably aren't used to slowing a game down and being patient. They're more of a hell for leather, run from everywhere kind of team, and that just played into Roscommon's game plan. Roscommon, they're all very good footballers. The backs are actually well capable of coming up the field and contributing to the scoreboard. But they got rough, they got physical. It was a horrible day, which probably played into them tactics. I just think that tactic against Galway, with the more natural, classy forwards that Galway have, I don't think Galway will mind doing what actually Paddy talked about, that no supporter wants to see, and just holding the ball for 2 minutes, taking the needle out of a game, being patient, slowing it down, winning a free, knocking a minute and a half off the clock with Shane Walsh taking his time going out to I think they have that bit more. I think it's patience, but I think the players are a bit more, classy is probably the wrong word, but I don't think they mind slowing it down and just being patient, more so than Mayo. I think Mayo, when things weren't going right and they missed a couple of chances, were so keen to get the next one right that they were nearly forcing it. And all it took was somebody to win a soft free, slow the game down, take the bite out of it, and that just stops the momentum.
What do you reckon, Neil? Is there a bit more firepower in that Galway forward line when they go up against Roscommon than what Mayo showed the last day?
Yeah, I think, you look at the Galway team when it's named, and that forward line really, it does stand out, and probably it's as much the additions to it this year. You look at Peter Cook, who was in the US last year, coming back into that half forward line. He's a classy footballer going forward, but he's also, a very physical footballer, great option on a kick out. So, he's a great addition to that Galway team, I suppose, and, giving them even a platform for the guys inside. Matthew Tierney on the other wing also, had a great league, probably disappointing league final. So they're not two new players for Galway, but they're two guys who, obviously Peter Cook is back and Matthew Tierney seems to have stepped it up a level. But I think we can sometimes look at Galway a bit nostalgically as well, and think back to this free-flowing football. And maybe even when Pádraig Joyce himself came in as manager initially, he thought that he could bring a lot of that back to Galway. But I think it's a reflection on how open-minded Pádraig Joyce is, that they've evolved from his first year in charge. I think if you remember back, they took a hiding from Mayo in Tuam in a league game, and that Galway team just seems a generation away now, even though it's only 3 years away. So I think it's whatever about Galway been a classy team. They're well able to mix this, and the flip side of that is Roscommon were probably tarred with a brush of maybe cynicism is too much to use, but I think they managed the game very well the last day against Mayo. But there's context to that as well. The conditions were terrible, but they got 2 goals into a very strong breeze, and that left them in a position where they could manage the game. And I think if it had happened on the flip side, Mayo would have been the ones managing the game. And so I'd be reluctant to say that Roscommon won the game through any level of cynicism the last day. I think it was just intelligent, and I'd be slow to sleep on some of them Roscommon attacking players too. I think there's a lot of class there. If you look at the Murtaghs, at Enda Smith there, even Donny Smith, he's just that guy who'll sit back in the pocket, he'll swing the outside of the left boot out of score from anywhere, and it's over the bar. There's a lot of class there. So I think probably Davy Burke has come in, he's rejuvenated some of those older players, and he's brought in Mark McHugh and Jerry McGowan, and they've probably added a little bit of steeliness as well. That, to be fair, was always there, but even when you look at Stephen Poacher being involved in them last year, they've improved their organisation levels, but they've probably just taken it to a new level now this year.
Darren, do you reckon Kildare at different times kicked themselves that they didn't get Davy Burke in as manager when he clearly wanted to manage his own county more than once and didn't get the job?
Well, they definitely were kicking themselves halfway through the league when you could see how well Roscommon were going and how the wheels were badly falling off the bus in Kildare. Look, it's always one of them ones, like he had underage success, so it seemed like an automatic progression for him. But Kildare did bring in a management team that on paper looked like it was going to maybe kick Kildare into gear. What's gone wrong there, I don't know. But like Neil was saying, like what he's getting out of Roscommon at the moment, like it's not actually a surprise. I started tipping Roscommon last year, and as soon as I did, they kind of fell off the cliff. But like when you go through their team, I actually found last year that they were one of the best teams at mixing up the game from a running game, because they have big physical guys, to a kicking game, because they have fellas who are well able to do the long pass, but they're quite big, strong fellas as well inside. Like even Kerry man Conor Cox, who has been very good the last couple of years, having to make do with a place on the bench. Having a fella that can kick scores from anywhere coming off the bench is going to be huge in this game as well. But yeah, definitely the Roscommon lads are getting a massive kick from the new management team, Mark McHugh. I was actually told by Ian McGee last year how good a coach he was, and how word was spreading about his ability on the coaching team. And like that, he's a young man as well. So the two of them are probably younger than a few of the Roscommon lads.
I know Darran is edging towards Galway. Neil, what way are you looking on this one?
Yeah, I think, conditions are going to have a big part to play in it. Roscommon, I think another big thing with them versus Galway is, and we touched on it at the outset, the underage success that Roscommon had, maybe over the last 10 years, they don't have any fear of Galway. Maybe we've seen with Roscommon when they went outside the province to play some of the, the likes of a Dublin or a Kerry, they've struggled a little bit. When they go to play Galway, there's no inferiority complex there at all. They're a very dangerous beast. I'd be slow to write them off. And to be honest, I think even we look back to last year's Division 2 final, it sums up the type of game that it could even be this Sunday, where, Galway were in control. You probably would have said they had the game won, but Roscommon were able to produce, a few moments of magic down the straight to pip them. They pipped them in the league this year as well. So, I think Galway, if they play 10 times, I think Galway will probably win 6 to 7 times. But Roscommon have that ability where to see them beat Galway wouldn't be any surprise at all.
Gaelic football here on Off the Ball is in partnership with AIB. They are the proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out the toughest for more. When we come back, we'll find out if Darran still ranks Kerry as the best team in the country.
Gaelic football on Off the Ball.
With AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out #the toughest for more.
Gaelic football on Off the Ball.
With AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out #the toughest for more.
Welcome back. Neil Ewing and Darran O'Sullivan looking ahead to this weekend's football championship games across the provinces. And Darran, you were name-checked by Darran O'Sullivan this week in his piece in the Times. And there was, or Darran O'Shea, I should say, he mentioned you during the week in terms of the lack of strength and depth he sees about the Kerry panel right now. He mentioned the fact that Brian Sheehan, Owen Brosnan, yourself, Eamon Fitzmaurice were all available to spring on when you were going for back-to-back in that year of 06-07. He thinks that Kerry are lacking that depth this time round. And concerns about that, and David Moran maybe not being replaced yet in midfield. He reckons the Kerry are now third favourites for the All-Ireland. Do you share his concerns?
I can understand where his concerns are coming from. On the David Moran one, I just don't think you replace him. You just have to find another way of doing it. What David always brought was, and it's something, see, I found the league quite hard to judge this year because I didn't know what way teams are trying to approach it. And I think something that maybe sometimes if you're doing the punditry or you're a supporter, you kind of forget that the season's very different now, that if you're saying that the top level up here is where into county, that you go back with your club for 6 months where you're definitely playing at a lower level for a sustained period of time. It takes a bit of time to get back up to the inter-county level. You see it in the National League, a lot of fellas probably doing stuff that you get away with at club level, doesn't work at county level. In terms of Kerry's strength and depth, I think, look, this team that they named the weekend is very strong. I think a telling sign maybe of question marks is Paul Ganey was out for a long time. He's on the road 10 or 12 years this stage. He's straight into the team. He got a couple of maybe 5 or 10 minutes in the last couple of league games. Now, I know they went on a training camp, which really does ramp up training, but Stephen O'Brien, I think maybe if he had another week, he'd have been straight in as well, which isn't a great sign that you have lads who have been around 10 or 12 years that can just walk in after missing so much football. But the squad definitely looks stronger, I think, than it has done throughout the league. Whether they get that impact off the bench, we'll have to wait and see. But I do think that they were stuttering through the league. Maybe that was on purpose. I don't know. But I wouldn't put them down at third. Probably the lowest I go is second.
Well, then tell us who you got in first then.
I'm going with Galway.
Okay.
I just think that when you're looking at taking steps, and they got to an All-Ireland last year, and I did think, was it one of them years that, you know, they got it, not lucky, but things worked out well for them. But I think that the one thing holding back last year was the size of the squad. I think it's a lot stronger this year. Going back-to-back is very hard. You know, and Pat Spillane actually said at the start of the year he never saw an All-Ireland celebrated like it. And that's because it was 6 months. That wasn't the player's fault, but that's just the way it worked out. And it's very hard to get back. And you lose that bit of an edge after an All-Ireland. And that's just nature of the beast. So it'll be interesting over these next couple of weeks. Plus, going into the Munster Championship, look, we know how much Munster Championship isn't at the level it should be. For a number of years now, we won't know where Kerry are after another good couple of weeks.
Yeah, like Neil, when you look at it, Kerry have lost one game in a decade in the Munster Football Championship, which is that shock defeat against Cork. They beat Tipperary by 11 points 2 years ago, so we'd expect Kerry to qualify. So where are you ranking Kerry within the top three then?
Yeah, well, probably two things jumped to mind initially. I thought it was peak Euroism during the week when I read Darran O'Sullivan, but I heard Darran there say that Galway had the best forward line in the country. So I think, you know, that's his first attempt to downplay Kerry. I don't think there's anybody who'd swap their forward line for the Kerry forward line. Then to try and cry to poor mouth on backing up a second All-Ireland in a row and maybe not having the strength and depth. And you know, you talk about strength and depth, and you look at the Kerry bench. You know, I see Stephen O'Brien, Michael Burns, Killian Spillane, Adrian Spillane, Brino Beogluk, and that's not bad when it comes to strength and depth. So I think, I'd be reluctant to say that Kerry are.
You're not buying it.
No, I'm not buying out at all, Darran. I have to call you out on that one now. I think, to be honest with you, Will and Darran, I think Kerry have to be favourites for the All-Ireland. They have to be the number one team. I think, the league was funny this year, but I think that even ties back to the nature of this season. You know, Kerry, I think it was important for Jack O'Connor to come in last year, you know, set down a few markers, even change the style of play with Paddy Tally involved there. Not hugely, but, you know, just add a few little bits there as the league progressed. I think, you know, his core of players are very familiar with how they want to play. It wasn't as important to get his best 15 on the pitch as regularly this year. I think it was probably even more important that he got some of those guys the rest that they did get, maybe through knocks or injuries. And really, I think the season is opening up perfectly for Kerry at the minute. You know, we've talked about the Munster Championship maybe not being where it has been, and you know, in that respect, you know, disappointing to see Cork not be at the level that a county of that size should be at. But I think with Kerry now getting the 3 guaranteed round robin games, you know, it's going to leave them probably on a level pegging with everybody else going into those All-Ireland quarterfinals, whereas maybe before they've been coming into an All-Ireland quarterfinal against maybe some of the Ulster teams who have, you know, picked up 2 or 3 wins in a back door. You know, Ulster is such a dogfight. You could have a pretty strong team coming through a back door to a quarterfinal there, whereas this year Kerry are going to have the same number of games behind them in the group stage over that 3-4 week period before it. So I think it's, in terms of even integrating those players back, Kerry know they're going to get out of the round robin. They're probably going to top that group. You know, they can use those 3 games to integrate their team nearly as the league would have been, the last 3 games of the league would have been used in previous years. So, yeah, I'm low on sympathy for Kerry, and I'd be very surprised that Sam Maguire is not heading back that direction again this year.
There you go, Darran. You can't hide the arism when you've got a guy on the other side saying Kerry, no problem, back to back.
Yeah, I thought that died with the previous generation. Or you're doing well to keep that alive. Or maybe you're showing your age, Darran.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I just think, I don't know, there's something, I don't know, like that. I think the league has been hard to gauge teams and where they're at. I genuinely, I actually feel that the level across the board has dropped this year. And I do think it's down to the split season and the 6 months of playing at a lower level. And the one thing I do think Kerry were lacking throughout the league was cohesion, and that's just from a lack of playing together and a lack of time together. And obviously the way the games are coming every week, fellas weren't getting much time to work on much in the training pitch. Obviously the last couple of weeks will have done them good, and I do think the fact that let's say the Munster Championship isn't very strong, he'd be able to use that to give fellas like Paul Ganey maybe 70 minutes a weekend, which, to be fair to Paul, he had ankle surgery, and after, like I said, 10 or 12 years of playing at this level, to be able to come straight back in is a fair testament to him, and I suppose his hunger, which if Kerry don't win this year, it'll be like people be saying it was hunger that caught them. But fair play to Paul for getting back in there, because fellas got their chances, I thought, in the league. Jack gave a lot of fellas chances, and a lot of them didn't take them, and he went straight back to the guys who served him well the year before.
Yeah, again, get ready for his 45th championship game this weekend. Neil, the other game, and maybe this is the nature of the split season as well, both these teams had the disappointment of relegation just a few weeks ago in Limerick and Clare, but you know, the huge carrot of a provincial final and also going into the All-Ireland series for the winner of this game at the Gaelic grounds at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. I think you'd have to make Clare strong favourites though, based on what they did against Cork last time out.
Yeah, you probably would, but I think it was probably a bit disrespectful even to Limerick that after that Cork-Clare game, it was assumed it was going to be Clare in the Munster final. And, you know, they both were Division 2 teams this year, both relegated from Division 2. But, you know, that would suggest that the level between them isn't huge. And, you know, we're probably putting a lot of weight on Clare's relative success in previous seasons. And, you know, Limerick, a lot seems to have went on maybe behind the scenes there. It looked for all the world, or I guess it was probably openly reported that the players had sought a change in management. And, you know, they brought in Mark Fitzgerald, who was coaching the team, to take over the management team. I think, you know, they've added to that backroom team over the last number of weeks. You know, that's such a rare situation in GAA to have those mid-season managerial changes, or it had been up until this year. And, you know, the players are going to have a point to prove. Even, you know, taking that bit of a beating from Clare in the last league game will have hurt them as well. But, you know, they're not going to fear Clare. You beat them last year in the championship, you know, an epic game. They went to a penalty shootout. And it's a huge opportunity for Limerick to take down Clare and put themselves into the Sam Maguire, avoid the Talisman Cup. So yeah, you know, while Clare should be the favourites, it's one where I think, you know, if Limerick can get, you know, a decent start, stay in the game, Clare, as good as they have been, there's been just a little bit more up and down in their performances this year than there have been probably over the last 2 or 3 years. And there is, I think, a little bit of doubt there if Limerick can plant them seeds. And you know, Clare, I think they did particularly well to bounce back from that, what was just a very unclear performance and attitude up in Derry. But the fact that performance was in them, where nearly seemed like they threw in the towel, would worry me as well. So I think they'll have to start strongly. But the other side of it is they won't underestimate Limerick. You know, Colin Collins obviously in charge there. He's going to have his guys very well prepared for that game. They'll all be familiar with each other. So that, I suppose, element of rivalry and local knowledge, or the players knowing each other, may prevent a little bit of complacency in Clare. And they probably just have more match winners who have more experience at that higher level than Limerick have had over the last 2 years.
Darren, if we can stick with teams who've changed management mid-season, Donegal going to Down on Sunday afternoon. Saw Down in person a few weeks back when they had nothing to play for, and they ripped Offaly to shreds in the second half at the end of Division 3 to warm up for this one. With everything that's been going on in Donegal, not just with the relegation but also with the county board, and everything has just seemed a mess for the last 2 months, Down have to be looking at this as an absolute hijack job where they can knock Donegal out of the championship in Newry.
100%. The way things were going in Donegal, it was a bit of a soap opera. Like that, they started the league well with a win against Kerry, and after that it just seemed to spiral out of control. Down have probably are rejuvenated this year. They were probably at their lowest ebb ever last year. couple of positive results in the league. But Donegal, I talked to Eamon McGee probably less regularly now because he doesn't want to talk to me anymore. But they've, from the outside, it's just a soap opera. Like, obviously, you lose Michael Murphy, you know there's going to be a transition. You're hoping McBrearty can step up. He gets injured. And then everything, you know, even the sideshows that came out, people giving interviews about it. McGuinness came out, obviously what was going on with Carl Lacey. Everything just, it was like kick them when they're down. And the players, like, you can imagine the confidence is low. I was surprised the management stayed on with him. I thought they'd go, just because things were so poorly managed above, from the top all the way down. This is set up for Down to take a big scalp, but I think we'll get a kick off Donegal. I think Donegal have enough quality there. That probably means they'll get bait, but no, I think Donegal have enough quality. I think if the players have anything about them, which they didn't show in the league, they never showed any fight at all. But they've had a couple of weeks together now to go, look, it doesn't matter who's managing us. It doesn't matter what's going on the county board. If they have any bit of fight, they'll come out in this game and show a bit of heart, which they haven't shown up to now this year, which has probably been the most disappointing thing from him, which is unusual for him as well. There was nothing. It was just a whimper.
Neil, do you reckon they've a kick in them?
It's going to be interesting to see. Well, you know, to be honest, you have to feel a little bit for the group of players. To lose Michael Murphy, you know, was, for any county in the country, to lose them was going to be huge. And obviously, Paddy McBrearty stepped in then, even against Kerry that first league game. You know, huge performance to get them over the line. To lose him then to injury, you know, massive again. Obviously, the issues, the managerial stuff that happened in the background. Then you lose Ryan McHugh on top of that. You know, just in the last few weeks, it just seemed like for a group of players, you know, probably a younger group trying to take ownership of that team. Everything went against them for a while. But I know the plan was after the league that they were going to head away on a training camp. And probably one thing that encouraged me for Donegal was that Paddy Bradley and Aidan O'Rourke stayed on. You know, the county board were pretty open, that it was discussions between players, county board and management that led to the previous manager moving on. So you would assume that, you know, they had discussed with the players, were they, I suppose, open to the idea of Aidan O'Rourke and Paddy Bradley staying on. So the fact that the playing group obviously backed those guys to take them on suggested that they've seen something in them and they were willing to row in behind them. And I think it's going to be that siege mentality and, you know, some of that stuff that they worked on in that training camp and that just little bit of belligerence. It's going to be interesting to see if they have it. But to go to Newry and, you know, I think they're probably two teams. They're polar opposites of each other. If something goes wrong for Donegal on Sunday, they're going to start to doubt everything that's happening because of just the way the year has went for them. And it's just human nature, the way that'll happen. You look at Down, they've progressed this year, probably a little disappointed not to get promoted in the league, but, you know, they were right in the mix. Their performances have definitely improved. And Conor Laverty there as manager, you know, whatever, like, Conor Laverty brings as, you know, in terms of a coach, and, you know, he's huge, very highly regarded as a coach. I'm sure he's an excellent coach. But he's also a proven winner with Kilcoo, and there's even an aura around that Kilcoo team and some of the players involved with that. And I think that belief is one thing that Down will have. If something goes wrong for Down, for example, in the first half on Sunday, the guys will still believe that they can, you know, bounce back from it and win that game. And that's just the polar opposite to Donegal. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a huge challenge for Donegal to go to Newry and get a result. And I'd have Down, I'd probably fancy Down to pip that one. And, you know, I think even for Donegal heading into the round robin, you know, if they can just show a little bit of fight, it wouldn't be terrible for them. I think a performance that will get the supporters behind Donegal and kind of build that little bit of belief in themselves again will be very important to Donegal. Whereas I think for Down to not progress, I think they'll be eyeing up the possibility of an Ulster final this year.
Darren, the other one in Ulster is tomorrow. It's Cavan against Armagh. We were treated to a great game 4 years ago. The one that went to a draw after extra time, and then they went to a replay, and Cavan came out on top in that one. We're looking at two teams here who've gone in different directions, though. Armagh have come down from Division 1. Cavan had a very good campaign in Division 3 and are going from 4 back up to 2 in successive years. Who do you reckon is coming out on top tomorrow afternoon?
This is a hard one to call as well. Armagh, I think they excited everyone last year the way it went about their football. This year, they were one of the biggest disappointments, I felt. Look, you'd have to fancy Armagh. They're playing a higher quality football. I do think McGeeney, I don't think he wanted to get relegated, but I do think he was trying out new systems in terms of making sure they were more secure at the back. I just think that the level of football they were playing at up to now should get them over the line. Obviously, Rian O'Neill is back in the squad. They have players come in, Charlie O'Byrne's on the bench. You know, they're two big players that you can call upon. But to be fair, like Cavan were one of my favourite teams to watch throughout the year. And even last year, I actually felt that maybe if they took the Tailteann Cup a bit more seriously, I think they felt that they win it easily, and probably that's why they lost it. But no, I'm going to go with Armagh. I just think they've been playing at a higher level. There's too much at stake, an opportunity, and you know, after the disappointment of the league, they need big performances. They know they need to show a bit more attacking flair. They have a lot of attacking quality. They've shown that, not throughout the league this year, for whatever reason they wanted to go defensive, but I think they have too much attacking quality, too much quality all over the field, and to come off the bench.
4 games in Leinster across Sunday afternoon. You've got Kildare against Wicklow at Netwatch Cullen Park. That's at 2:30. Offaly against Meath is 4 p.m. in O'Connor Park. A game that Meath probably need to win, because to be assured of a place in the All-Ireland series, they'll want to be getting to a provincial final, so they don't have to look at permutations elsewhere over the next couple of weekends. And then you've got Laois against Dublin. Dublin having won by 15.5 points against Laois across their meetings since 2003, when Laois won the Leinster title. Neil, I was going to ask you a more general question about Dublin, where Dublin are at. I mean, people really feel that they're probably coming into the summer nicely, having played well against Derry in the Division 2 league final, back up to Division 1. You look at the team sheet that's named for this weekend. Paul Mannion back in a corner forward. You've got McCaffrey, I think, is named on the bench. Stephen Cluxon is named on the bench. Are they getting back towards where Dublin used to be before? And I take it the point that those changes could well happen to the team before the game on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, well, they're not getting back to where Dublin were before, but Dublin before were invincible. They were, literally nobody could beat them there for a few years, and even the top teams in Division 1 couldn't handle them come championship time. Mayo, to be fair to them, were the only county who could physically match up with them and try and go take them down the line. Everybody else just wasn't capable of competing with them. But are they getting back to a level where they can win the All-Ireland? Absolutely. It's before it wasn't in doubt that they were going to win the All-Ireland, bar maybe one big challenge each year. I think this year they can win the All-Ireland. It's just not a definite. We look back to last year's game versus Kerry, probably a little bit of a sliding doors moment in the first half of that game when Cormac Costello got the goal. A little against the run of play. It looked like Kerry could possibly streak ahead of them a little bit. But I think even with the playing pool they had available last year, they showed that they were capable of beating the eventual All-Ireland champions. Adding back those players that they have this year is definitely going to add strength to the group. Even in terms of, it mightn't necessarily be that Paul Mannion, Jack McCaffrey, Stephen Cluxon start games, but they're definitely going to push lads ahead of them, to higher levels in training. So, I think that's going to be reflected in Dublin's performances in the latter stages of the championship. I think the guys that have come in, everybody is still saying, Dublin haven't been great. They won Division 2, which was all that they could do. And, they beat Derry in a final there. And I think Derry are probably a little underrated as well. That win in the final, Derry be very disappointed to concede the sloppy goal. So, I think Dublin, they're going to win the Leinster Championship. Unfortunately, we have to say that at this stage. And I think it's maybe the way the draw is teed up for, is it a Dublin Kerry semi-final? And that's going to be an epic encounter if it comes around.
Darran, I'll give you the very final word on this. The three lads coming back in, what do they add to Dublin for this year?
On paper, they add everything. On grass, who's to know? McCaffrey, I think they would have liked to see him get more game time through the league. Whether he was injured, I don't know. Dublin seemed to be brilliant at keeping secrets. How they kept Cluxton on the wraps, I'll never know. They'll definitely add to the quality in training. They'll definitely bring on players around them. Like you see the Dublin team names, I can put everything I have. That won't be the team that starts. It never is. But look, the squad all of a sudden, if you're the opposition, you're looking at that squad, all of a sudden it's a lot more intimidating. Can Desi keep them all happy? Will Stephen be happy to come back as a sub-goalie? Paul Mannion was one of my favourite players, to be honest, and I didn't have many favourite players outside of Kerry, but it's playing well for the club for a number of years and then trying to get back up at the county level. It'll be interesting to see what kind of role he plays this year. I don't think he'll be the same Mannion in the corner that'll be looking to skin his man and take on his man all the time. I think he might try and go a bit deeper, being a playmaker. So there's a lot of question marks about Dublin as well. Neil mentioned it there. They won Division 2. That's all they could do performance-wise. Like a lot of other teams, left a lot to be desired. Where they're at, who knows? They've had a good couple of weeks now to work on things. But similar to Kerry, they have a couple of warm-up games really in their provincials. They shouldn't be challenged too much.
Well, look, if you missed any of the GA coverage during the week here and Off the Ball, there is a stack of preview content available ahead of the weekend. David Brady, you've got Shane Curran, who's going to be alongside Tommy Rooney for Roscommon against Galway at the Hyde on Sunday afternoon. You have the football pod itself, that will also be back on Monday. Have a look at the OTB GA stream wherever you pick up your podcasts. Lads, been a pleasure to have you with us to look forward to the weekend. Thanks a million, Darran and Neil.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, lads.
Thank you. Take care.
And our Gaelic football coverage here on Off the Ball is in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the GA Senior Football Championship. Check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more.
Gaelic football on Off the Ball.
With AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out hashtag #TheToughest for more.